The Peninsula Fine Arts Center is hosting 3 fabulous exhibitions through March 22nd of 2015. One is called Looking Both Ways, African and African American Art. And we have civil rights photographs from the Daily Press archives, as well as valedictorian recent works from local artist Clayton Singleton. In our main 2 galleries, we have Looking Both Ways, which is a collection of African and African American art from the turn of the century to the present. And it all works looking at artists who incorporate their cultural heritage, their identity in their work. So we have many well-known African American artists on display. Kara Walker, Carrie Mae Weems, Whitfield Lovell. So there's some leading African American artists that have never shown their work here before at the Peninsula Fine Arts Center. We have some historical African artifacts that are on view, and we've paired them with some contemporary works. And sometimes you will see a one-on-one relationship with, you know, a beaded banner from Mali in relationship to some wonderful beaded piece by Joyce Scott, and you'll see that one-on-one connection. Other ones will be a little bit more obtuse, but it's great to see both of them kind of juxtaposed, you know, the historical with the contemporary. When we looked at artists for the exhibition, we wanted to reference African American art during the Great Depression, the WPA, the Works Progress Administration. There were artists like Robert Gwaltney and Thomas Hart Benton, 2 artists that are white, that are representing African American art, the more agricultural side of them, planting in the fields. And we thought that was great that white artists were looking at African American life and putting that out there, you know, examining that in their work. And it's a great jumping off point because some of their students became well-known artists like Robert Gwaltney. One of his students was Faith Ringgold, who we have on exhibit. Then one of Faith Ringgold's students, Wendell George Brown, he used to be the director of education at Hampton University Museum. He has a work on view as well. So there's all about these wonderful connections that that all of these artists have. So it's really quite remarkable because some of them do come back locally to the peninsula. In our back gallery, we have an exhibition called Valedictorian. It's by works by Clayton Singleton. He's an artist and educator over in Norfolk, and he's dealing with kind of the education of African Americans in our time and how can we better develop that. His artworks kind of hit a strong point in developing that. One of the great surprises in planning this exhibition was to find artists that have a local connection to the community. First and foremost was Betty Blayton. She was born in Williamsburg, lived here until she went off to college, and her story is really interesting because when she decided to go to study art, there were no art accredited schools in Virginia. She had to go to Syracuse University for her art education, but at the time there was the Jim Crow laws, so the Commonwealth of Virginia paid for all 4 of her years at Syracuse. Now very well known, respected artist up in New York, and she has 2 works of hers in the exhibition, so it's nice to have the local connection and kind of show that to the community that there are some wonderful local African American artists that have done very well for themselves, and to show that to the community. You know, what we decided to do when we, decided on this theme, this topic, was to look at historical works of art as well as contemporary works and see how artists today are referencing issues of the past. And as we've seen in recent events, it's all very timely, dealing with, civil rights, race issues. Some of these images are very, can provoke a lot of emotions, and I think sometimes art can really say and speak to us more than what the written word can. And I hope that when individuals come, people come to the exhibition, that they can see these works and that it provokes a discussion to help us better communicate, as far as race issues, identity struggles, and that we can come together. In our hallway gallery, we have the civil rights photographs from the Daily Press archives, 20 photographs that we have pulled from their collection from the 1960s to the 70s. Really interesting pieces of downtown Newport News that you may have never seen before. A great interesting look at the history of Newport News and what was going on at that time.
I started taking pictures when I was in 8th grade. I started working for the Daily Press in 1959. And down here, we didn't have all of that problem. Nothing that we were afraid to go into places or anything. And all of this trouble that we had here, we stayed back. We did not go in businesses if we weren't invited in. We didn't go into school. We stayed off their property. We used unmarked cars, and we really didn't have that much problem. Only one time, I remember, I believe one of the cars got a brick thrown at it. I didn't expect that big a turnout on some of them. Actually, until later, I didn't realize exactly until I saw the pictures just how many people there was coming across 25th Street Bridge. I knew the mayor and everybody was up front. I knew the dignitaries were up front, but when you could see them coming across the bridge, the old bridge, it really looks different with all the people in that picture. We would go out we knew that there was going to be a problem, say at Warwick High School, or we'd get a tip that they were going to protest there, and we would go just sit back in an unmarked car in case there was trouble. A lot of times we didn't even make a picture, but we were there in case there was trouble, and we didn't want to be scooped by another news source. During that time, we had a lot of instances, if we had a setup picture or something, the people would say, don't get on the end of your picture. Because if you get on the end of the picture, they'll crop you out. So every time you lined up somebody, you had them all switching around to get to the middle of the picture. I think it's easier now than it was back then. If you go on assignment today, you get the picture, I can push the button and I can see, hey, I got it. When you were going on these assignments when my time was, you didn't know if you had your camera set wrong, or you had the synchronization wrong, or any little thing could go wrong, or you messed it up in the darkroom, you lost the picture. So now, when you leave the assignment, you know you got it.
Well, the one thing I think that surprised me in planning this is, originally we had planned, obviously, to have these wonderful African artifacts on view, as well as contemporary works, and to kind of, show this juxtaposition. But even in looking at works that, from, the early 1900s, you still see that connection with contemporary works. You see, James Van Der Zee's photographs, and you still see a connection with, maybe a Whitfield level piece. And so it's interesting to see, even though, maybe only 100 years has separated them, you still see that connection. And I think that's really, it's really fascinating to look and see how contemporary African-American artists are still referencing their past, and how it has influenced them in their artwork, and what that says, and what we're still trying to say, as we go forth in the 21st century.
No, I would not expect them to be in an art museum, although they really look nice now. I thought I was just doing my job at the time. I had no idea that 50 years later we'd be talking about this. However, I should have. It was important, and certain things did need to be corrected. And it still does.
This is Looking Both Ways, African and African-American art, on view at the Peninsula Fine Arts Center until March 22nd, 2015. Peninsula Fine Arts Center is on the grounds of the Mariners Museum Park, 101 Museum Drive in Newport News. This exhibition, obviously, I would love everyone to come and view. I think it's a great history lesson for us all, because it does look at, the history of African American artists. We love to have school kids in here. I think there's a wonderful connection between artwork and history, and how we all relate that, kind of, looking back to see what we've done in the past, as well as, looking to the future. Looking both ways is what the title of the exhibition is, and that's what we want to emphasize. Is that we need to look to the past to see what we've done, so that we don't necessarily repeat the same mistakes that we made for the future. So we're looking both ways.